You were freed by truth, not as a concept, not as a slogan, not as a religious phrase repeated so often that it lost its weight, but as a real rupture in your inner world. At some point in your life, something broke open. A realization came. You saw clearly what was false, what was feeding on you, what was keeping you small. And for a moment, maybe brief, maybe long, you felt it. That strange mix of clarity and relief, as if chains had fallen, as if the air was finally breathable, as if you could finally say, "I see it now." And yet here you are, still listening to the old voice, still reacting to the same fears, still negotiating with the same lies, still doubting what you already know in your bones is true. This is not because you are weak. It is not because the truth failed you. It is not because freedom was an illusion. It is because truth frees faster than the mind learns to live without its cages. Freedom arrives instantly. Unlearning takes time. And the lie, especially the one you lived inside for years, does not leave quietly. This message is not meant to accuse you. It is meant to wake you up gently but firmly. Because the most dangerous prison is not ignorance. It is returning to the cell after the door has already been opened. You were freed by truth. The real question is not why truth did not work. The real question is why part of you still feels safer believing what once controlled you. Now we begin where most people avoid looking, not at the lie itself, but at why the lie still feels familiar, comforting and persuasive even after it has been exposed. The lie didn't just deceive you, it formed you. Most people misunderstand the power of a lie. They imagine a lie as a false statement that can be corrected by a true one, as if the mind were a simple container where misinformation can be replaced by accuracy. But the lie that held you was never just information. It was a structure, a system, a way of seeing yourself in the world. It shaped how you interpreted pain, success, love, rejection, God, worth, safety, and identity. When a lie lives with you long enough, it stops feeling like a lie. It becomes the lens through which everything is filtered. And when truth arrives, it does not just challenge a belief, it threatens an entire internal order. This is why freedom can feel destabilizing instead of immediately peaceful, because the lie, as harmful as it was, gave you something: predictability. It told you what to expect from life, even if what it promised was suffering. It explained why things hurt. It gave you rules to survive. It told you who you were allowed to be and who you were not. Truth removes those false rules. And suddenly, the mind panics. Not because truth is dangerous, but because uncertainty is unfamiliar. You might not consciously believe the lie anymore, yet your nervous system still reacts as if it were true. You might intellectually reject it, but emotionally, your body still flinches. This is not hypocrisy, this is conditioning. For example, if the lie told you that love must be earned through pain, truth saying, "You are already worthy," feels abstract, even suspicious. If the lie told you that God is distant and approval is fragile, truth saying, "You are seen and held," can feel almost threatening. Not because it is false, but because it contradicts the inner map you used to survive. The lie formed reflexes. It trained your expectations. It taught you where danger supposedly lives and where safety supposedly hides. Even when the lie is exposed, those reflexes do not instantly disappear. They wait, quietly, and when stress, fear, loneliness, or uncertainty appear, they reassert themselves. This is why you sometimes feel like you are going backward. In reality, you are not regressing. You are confronting layers of the lie that truth has already destabilized. There is another reason the lie still whispers. The lie offered identity. It gave you a role. Victim, struggler, unworthy one, the one who must always prove, the one who must always endure. When truth removes that identity, there is a strange emptiness. Freedom requires rebuilding the self, not just tearing down illusions. And rebuilding is uncomfortable because it demands choice instead of habit. Many people unconsciously return to the lie because it feels like home. Not a healthy home, but a familiar one. The mind often confuses familiarity with safety, and so even after the door is open, even after the chains are broken, part of you hesitates to walk fully into the unknown terrain of truth. But here is what you must understand deeply. The lie does not persist because it is powerful. It persists because it is remembered. And memory, when unexamined, can masquerade as reality. Truth freed you at the level of vision. Now the work is allowing that vision to retrain your reactions, your self-talk, your expectations, and your sense of identity. That process feels slow because it is not about knowing something new. It is about becoming someone new. And becoming is always quieter, slower, and more demanding than being deceived. This is only the first layer. The next is more uncomfortable, but also more liberating, because once you understand why the lie formed you, you can begin to see why part of you still defends it, even when it hurts. Why the mind protects the lie, even after truth arrives. There is a part of you that does not ask whether something is true or false. It asks only one question: does this keep me safe? And safety to the human mind is not defined by freedom. It is defined by familiarity, control, and predictability. This is where most people misunderstand themselves. They assume that once truth is seen, the lie will naturally lose its grip. But the mind does not operate on truth alone. It operates on survival patterns formed long before truth ever arrived. And those patterns do not dissolve simply because they are exposed. The lie may have wounded you, but it also organized your inner chaos. It told you what to expect from people. It prepared you for disappointment. It justified your pain. It gave meaning to suffering, even if that meaning was distorted. And when truth removes the lie, the mind feels naked, unprepared, exposed to a world it does not yet know how to navigate. This is why the mind often tries to protect the lie instead of celebrating freedom. Not because the lie is good, but because the unknown feels dangerous. Truth opens space, and space is terrifying to a mind trained to survive by tension. When you lived inside the lie, you knew who you were. You knew what to fear. You knew how to brace yourself. Even misery becomes manageable when it is predictable. Truth disrupts this. It says, you are not who you thought you were. Life is not what you were told. God is not who fear made him. And suddenly the mind has no script, so it does what it has always done. It reaches backward, not consciously, not deliberately, but reflexively. You might notice this when you feel drawn back to old thoughts during moments of vulnerability. When anxiety rises, the old explanations return. When loneliness appears, the old beliefs whisper again. When things go quiet, the lie tries to fill the silence with familiar noise. This is not weakness, this is conditioning. The mind clings to the lie because the lie once functioned as armor. Heavy armor, painful armor, but armor nonetheless. And removing armor feels unsafe until you trust that you are no longer at war. There is another uncomfortable truth here. The lie often allowed you to avoid responsibility for freedom. Freedom demands presence, choice, courage, ownership of your inner life. The lie, on the other hand, told you that forces outside of you determined everything: fate, punishment, unworthiness, abandonment, destiny shaped by fear. As long as the lie ruled, you did not have to step fully into authorship of your life. Truth removes excuses, and that can feel heavier than chains. When truth says you are free, the mind quietly asks, then why do I still feel afraid? Why do I still struggle? Why is life still hard? And if the mind is not ready to integrate truth fully, it concludes, maybe the lie was right after all. But this is a false conclusion. The discomfort you feel is not proof that the lie was true. It is proof that you are in transition. Freedom does not erase fear instantly. It reveals it. The lie kept fear organized. Truth exposes fear so it can be healed rather than obeyed. This is why people sometimes sabotage their own awakening. They return to old narratives, not because they doubt truth, but because truth removes the structure that fear depended on. And fear, when exposed, screams louder before it dissolves. There's also grief involved, grief that few talk about, grief for the years lived under deception, grief for choices made while blind, grief for identities built on false premises. And grief can make the lie feel comforting, because at least the lie explains the past without forcing you to mourn it. Truth requires mourning. Mourning the version of you who did what they could with what they knew. Mourning the time lost. Mourning the illusions that once gave you purpose, even if they were false. Until that grief is acknowledged, part of you will keep revisiting the lie, not because you believe it, but because you have not fully said goodbye to it. Understand this clearly. The mind protects the lie not because truth failed, but because truth is still being integrated. Safety has not yet caught up with freedom. And that is not a failure. It is a stage. The next layer goes even deeper, because beneath the mind's protection of the lie lies something more subtle and more difficult to confront. The emotional loyalty you develop toward the very thing that hurt you. Emotional loyalty to what once hurt you. There is a kind of loyalty that does not come from love, but from endurance. A loyalty formed not because something was good to you, but because you survived it. This is one of the most difficult truths to face on the path of awakening. Part of you may feel emotionally loyal to the very lie that wounded you. This loyalty is not rational. It does not announce itself openly. It hides behind phrases like, "This is just how I am. This is how life works. I shouldn't expect more," or "It's safer not to hope." But beneath these statements is a quiet allegiance to a narrative that once explained your suffering and made it survivable. When you live inside a lie for long enough, it becomes intertwined with your story of resilience. You did not just endure despite the lie, you endured through it, and because of that, the lie begins to feel like a witness to your pain, something that knows you, something that stayed when others did not, something that gave meaning to your endurance, even if it distorted your worth. This is why walking away from the lie can feel like betrayal. Not betrayal of truth, but betrayal of your past self. You might feel, without realizing it, that abandoning the lie means invalidating the pain you went through, as if saying, "This wasn't true," also says, "This shouldn't have hurt." And that feels unbearable, because your pain was real, your struggle was real, your endurance was real, so the heart hesitates. The lie becomes emotionally charged because it was present during your darkest hours. It was there when you were alone. It was there when you made sense of chaos. It was there when you had no better explanation. And even though it harmed you, it also accompanied you. This creates what can only be described as emotional captivity, not captivity to the lie's logic, but to its familiarity, to the sense of being known by it, to the identity forged in its presence. Truth, by contrast, arrives clean. It does not carry the emotional weight of your suffering. It does not feel earned the way endurance does. And so at first, truth can feel distant, abstract, almost impersonal, while the lie feels intimate. This is why some people unconsciously romanticize their suffering. They protect the narrative that says pain was necessary for worth, that struggle was proof of depth, that heaviness was evidence of meaning. These ideas feel noble, but they often mask a refusal to release what once defined you. There is fear here too. If the lie was not true, then what does that say about all the years you lived under it, about the relationships you tolerated, the opportunities you declined, the version of yourself you suppressed. Truth forces you to confront not just the future, but the past. And the mind often resists truth, not because it is painful, but because it demands reinterpretation. It demands that you look at your story and say, I did my best with what I believed, but I was not broken. I was misinformed. That shift is humbling. And humility is uncomfortable for an ego that survived by identifying with pain. Another layer of emotional loyalty is fear of emptiness. The lie filled space. It filled silence with explanation. It filled uncertainty with fatalism. When the lie dissolves, there is a gap, and the heart, if not guided gently, may rush to fill that gap with what it knows, even if what it knows is harmful. But here is the truth beneath this struggle. Releasing the lie does not erase your pain. It redeems it. Your suffering does not lose meaning when the lie is exposed. It gains clarity. Your endurance was not noble because you were unworthy. It was noble because you kept going without truth. And now you no longer need to prove strength through suffering. Truth does not ask you to betray your past self. It asks you to forgive them, to say, you survived in the only way you knew how, and now I will live differently, not because you were wrong, but because you deserve more. This is where real freedom begins, not when the lie is disproven, but when emotional loyalty to it is gently released. The next layer goes deeper still, because even after emotional loyalty loosens its grip, there remains one final and powerful reason the lie tries to reclaim you. It offers certainty in a world that truth intentionally leaves open. The lie promised. Certainty, truth demands trust. At the deepest level, the lie did something that truth deliberately refuses to do. It promised certainty, not peace, not love, not wholeness, but certainty. And to a human mind shaped by fear, certainty can feel more valuable than freedom. The lie told you exactly how things would end. It told you who would fail you. It told you how much you were allowed to hope. It told you what to expect from God, from people, from yourself. Even when those expectations were bleak, they were stable. Predictability became a substitute for safety. Truth does not work that way. Truth opens rather than closes. It removes false conclusions without replacing them with rigid guarantees. It does not say, here is exactly how everything will unfold. It says, you are not trapped, you are not condemned, you are not powerless. And then it asks you to walk. This is where many people falter, because certainty feels like control, and control feels like safety. But certainty rooted in a lie is still a prison, even if the walls feel familiar. The lie said, this is how it is, and it will never change. Truth says, it can change, but you must learn to trust without seeing the whole path. That is terrifying to a mind trained by pain. The lie allowed you to brace yourself, to prepare for disappointment, to lower expectations so you would not be shattered again. Truth removes that armor. It does not promise you will never be hurt. It promises that hurt is no longer the authority over your identity. And that distinction matters more than most people realize. Under the lie, certainty was achieved by shrinking, by narrowing your emotional range, by accepting less, by telling yourself not to want too much, not to feel too deeply, not to believe too boldly. Certainty was purchased with self-denial. Truth refuses that bargain. Truth does not tell you that life will be easy. It tells you that fear is no longer your master. It does not tell you that nothing bad will happen. It tells you that bad things do not define who you are or what you are worth. This kind of freedom requires trust, not blind optimism, but grounded trust. Trust that you can respond rather than merely react. Trust that you can remain present even when outcomes are unclear. Trust that meaning is not dependent on control. And here is where the lie makes its final, most seductive appeal. It whispers, at least I warned you. At least I prepared you. At least I didn't let you hope. And hope after disappointment feels dangerous. So the mind considers returning to the lie, not because it doubts truth, but because truth feels too open-ended, too spacious, too demanding of faith. The lie offered answers. Truth offers relationship. The lie gave rules. Truth gives responsibility. The lie said, "Here is how the world works." Truth says, "Here is who you are. Now live from that." That shift is immense because certainty removes the need for presence. When everything is already decided, you do not have to stay awake. You do not have to choose consciously. You do not have to listen inwardly. You simply follow the script. Truth dissolves the script, and suddenly you are required to participate in your own life. This is why truth often feels heavier at first. Not because it burdens you, but because it hands you back your agency. It treats you not as a victim of fate, but as a conscious being capable of discernment, growth, and response. The lie demanded belief. Truth demands trust. Belief is passive. Trust is lived. Belief clings to conclusions. Trust walks without them. And until trust is practiced, the lie will continue to look appealing, not because it is true, but because it feels simpler. But simplicity, built on false certainty, is not peace. It is stagnation. Real peace emerges when you no longer need guarantees to remain grounded, when uncertainty no longer feels like a threat but like space, when you stop asking life to prove itself safe before you allow yourself to be present. You were freed by truth. But freedom does not remove uncertainty. It redefines your relationship with it. There is one final layer left, and this one is the most confronting of all. Because beneath certainty, beneath loyalty, beneath conditioning, there is something the lie protected you from facing directly, your own authority. Freedom requires you to become your own witness. At the very core of why the lie still tries to reclaim you is this: the lie allowed you to outsource authority over your life. Truth takes that authority back and places it in your hands. This is the part no one warns you about. When you lived under the lie, your inner world was governed by something external: fear, doctrine, expectations, narratives, trauma, or distorted images of God and self. Even if those forces were cruel, they gave you a reference point. You measured yourself against them. You judged your worth through them. You explained your suffering through them. Truth dismantles that hierarchy, and suddenly there is no external voice left to tell you who you are. That silence can feel unbearable. So the mind searches for the old authority, the old judge, the old framework, because without it you must learn to witness yourself without condemnation or excuse. You must learn to stand inside your own awareness and say, "I see myself clearly, and I remain present." Freedom is not just release from chains, it is the responsibility of self-recognition. Under the lie, you did not have to fully trust your perception. You deferred. You doubted yourself. You asked permission to exist as you were. Truth removes that deferral. It does not say, "Believe nothing." It says, "See clearly." And seeing clearly means becoming your own witness. This is profoundly uncomfortable because it removes both victimhood and false innocence. You can no longer blame the lie entirely, nor can you deny your agency. You must hold both compassion and accountability at once. The lie separated these things. Truth unites them. Under truth, you cannot say, "I am broken beyond repair." But you also cannot say, "Nothing is my responsibility." Truth says, "You were misled, and now you are awake." And awakening does not mean perfection. It means presence. Becoming your own witness means you no longer need an external voice to validate your pain or define your worth. It means you no longer need fear to motivate you or shame to restrain you. It means you can observe your thoughts without obeying them. Feel your emotions without being ruled by them. Make choices without demanding certainty. This is where the lie loses its final stronghold, because the lie thrived in the absence of self-witnessing. It thrived when you did not trust your own awareness. It thrived when you needed something outside yourself to tell you what was real. Truth restores that trust, but restoration feels like exposure at first. There is no hiding place, no script, no narrative to disappear into. Just you, awake, aware, and responsible for how you respond to what arises. This is why freedom can feel heavier than captivity at the beginning. Captivity told you who to be. Freedom asks you to discover who you are, and discovery is slower than obedience. The final deception of the lie is making you believe that you are safer when someone or something else defines you. Truth dismantles that deception and reveals something far more powerful. You were never meant to be governed by fear or false certainty. You were meant to live awake, not controlled by lies, not driven by reflex, not imprisoned by familiarity, but grounded in awareness. This does not mean life becomes easy. It means life becomes honest. And honesty, while demanding, is deeply stabilizing. You were freed by truth. If part of you still believes the lie, it is not because truth failed. It is because freedom is still being embodied. And embodiment takes time. So when the old voice returns, do not panic. Do not argue. Do not shame yourself. Simply witness it, see it clearly, and let it pass. Because the lie has no power where awareness stands, and you are no longer asleep.